Hi, this is Cash Grab, and today we're going to be looking at what I consider to be the most iconic run on the Days Gone challenge, Ambush Camp Rush. To be entirely clear, this run is not mine. I wish it was. It's Horde Slayer's. He's been kind enough to let me use this video as part of this project. His original run is linked in the description, and I would very much suggest that you go and check that out, and his channel in general, because there are brilliant runs on there. This video is the first of a new series that I've wanted to do for a while, looking at the best runs in Days Gone challenge mode history, and to hopefully explain why they're so great. But before we get into the run itself, let's talk about the challenge, Ambush Camp Rush, and the history of high scoring runs on it. Ambush Camp Rush is unique among the Days Gone challenges. Firstly, and most obviously, it's the only challenge set in an ambush camp. It's the only challenge to require the use of residue bolts. It's the only challenge where there is a sub-challenge which actively requires stealth. It's also one of only two challenges that pits the player against human enemies along with survive. The setting for this challenge is familiar to anyone who has played the main Days Gone game. It's the Bear Bay ambush camp, which is located in the southeast corner of Highway 97. The camp is tough in the main game, having 19 enemies, including 2 heavily armoured marauders, but the camp in the challenge is far more problematic. The camp is fortified with more traps. There are 25 marauders, many of whom have some kind of armour, but it gets even more challenging. The enemies spawn in at different times and in different locations, so a steady route to stealth kill all 25 enemies is impossible. It also wouldn't help you to get a gold score in this challenge, as the sub-challenges require the player to kill as many marauders as possible using a blend of residue bolts, the materials for which are limited, and explosives, which hardly make a stealth-based run easy. Finally, like almost all of the Days Gone challenges, Ambush Camp Rush is timed with tiered time-based bonuses. 2.5k for completing the challenge in under 6 minutes, 5k for under 4 minutes 30, and 10k for a run completed under 3 minutes 30. All of which would be relatively okay, except that much of the camp is also waterlogged, which makes sprinting much more difficult. Depending on your play style, a gold medal on this challenge is tough, but it's achievable. To get a big enough score to crack the global top 25 in the original game, however, is extremely tough. As of 2025, the minimum requirement is a 51k run, which generally requires getting most, if not all, of the following conditions. Maintaining the multiplier throughout the duration of the run, which is achieved by linking kills and picking up a sufficient amount of the items littered around the map. Getting at least 15 residue bolt kills at a point when that multiplier is in a good place. Getting at least 3 explosive kills. Maintaining stealth until you have killed 24 of the 25 enemies. Taking 0 damage, including from traps or falling damage. And completing the run in under 6 minutes. This is definitely a tall order, as the placement of enemies is variable and unpredictable, at least to an extent. The availability of the marauder shown here in yellow is also variable, and he is the key to a good score 9 times out of 10. To push the score higher, a player needs to either be quicker, pick up more items to drive up the multiplier and the score, or get more residue bolt kills. This requires a level of skill and patience that very few possess. For the first 5 years of challenge mode history, plenty of the best players in the game had grinded this challenge extensively and managed to reach very good scores. Borislav 24/7 had put together some excellent runs, accumulating in a 54k run. A couple of years earlier, Primal Scream Gaming, one of the legends of the early days of the Days Gone challenge mode leaderboards, had reached just shy of 55k with a great run. Bkaz Pab, another leaderboard monster, Grey Soul, who is one of the new leaderboard monsters, described as somebody who should be on the Mount Rushmore of Days Gone challenge mode. I would agree with that. Had managed to reach 58k in what looked for a long time to be an unbeatable score. Enter Horde Slayer. Horde Slayer had already built a very strong reputation among Days Gone challenge mode players with his startlingly good work on the Endless Horde challenges. First, he put together a frankly absurd 620 million point global #1 run on Infested, which several years on remains insurmountable. Then, after a long battle with a very fine Japanese player, Variant 130HM, he managed a 718 million point run on Surrounded to get to the global #1. No player has yet even had the gall to go after this score. So, what's the next logical step for Horde Slayer? Get into 2 billion on the remaining Endless Horde Challenge Black Friday? Nope. It was time to go after the de facto global #1 spot on Ambush Camp Rush. I say de facto because at that time there was a higher score than BCAS Pab's 58k. As I've said at various times on this channel, this score was achieved through illegitimate means unless or until proved otherwise. I don't want to give this any more airtime though, so I'll set that score aside. As I've already laid out, this challenge is far from straightforward and is unquestionably one of the most difficult. It's also very different from Infested and Surrounded, requiring a whole different set of skills and a totally different approach. In some ways this shift of focus makes sense. Surrounded is by far the most extreme of the Endless Horde challenges, and to reach the ridiculous score that Horde Slayer did takes up countless hours. The successful run itself is over 3 hours long, and the volume of practice and failed runs to breach the 700 million point barrier must have been a massive time sink. We're talking about weeks and months here, not hours and days. So a shorter challenge makes sense, but why not one of the shorter time-based Horde challenges like Reload or Keep Them Safer? Who knows, but we should all be grateful, as the run he eventually put together is astounding, elevating a level on a video game into a kind of elegant, violent ballet. Horde Slayer had already posted an excellent 56k run on this challenge, which was the closest anyone had got to BCAS Pab. But to get to the #1 and to break the 60k barrier, a number of changes would be needed. Firstly, the route would need to be changed. There are a number of different routes that the best challenge mode players have employed to generate 50k plus runs, but all the good runs I have seen start basically the same way. Players take this route because it enables you to get the first armoured heavy under the influence of a residue bolt quickly, creating a hotspot for residue bolt kills, getting the multiplier going and pulling enemies into that zone. The player then typically hits 2 of the 3 marauders in this raised section with residue bolts, and usually but not always using a Molotov cocktail on this sniper, because it's basically quite hard to hit the sniper from the angle that you're at. The player can then get around the side of the camp and start the run in earnest, picking up and crafting items, picking off marauders with further residue bolts, and placing a proximity mine right here next to the hatch from which the armoured flamethrower guy appears. From there, a few route options open up, primarily back through the camp to the left or around the outside of the camp to the right. Both routes effectively take the player down to this section where the aim is to get the yellow armoured marauder under the influence, as he often kills 5 or 6 or more marauders, solidifying the multiplier, chalking off the residue bolt kills sub-challenge, and setting the player up for the final third of the run, which is all about getting back over to the sniper's nest where many of the marauders will still be. This route works, there are items aplenty and loads of bushes and barriers to maintain stealth, but it can be quite slow and it also can be quite unpredictable. The next major consideration is speed. As I've said, the best runs, those pushing towards 55k, generally require the player to complete the run in under 4 minutes 30, but there are significant compromises in these runs, especially in Primal Scream Gaming's run, where he elects to use the sniper rifle, suppressed of course, to take out the last 4 marauders. Is this a quick way to finish the run? Yes. Does this impact the amount of points you can generate per kill? Yes, negatively. The final few kills on Primal Scream's run net him 600 points per kill, even with the multiplier above 100. Residue bolt kills score much higher. At a similar multiplier they net 1400 points, so the big question became, how could Horde Slayer utilise as many residue bolt kills as possible and somehow concurrently knock a minute off the time taken to complete the run? The solution, as you'll see, is to invert the run, taking out the sniper and friend on the right, then barrelling straight into the camp proper. But that's only scraping the surface. What Horde Slayer did was to distill the challenge into its essence. Get the most effective marauders under the influence of residue bolts, move quickly and pick up enough items to work up the multiplier to a place where the residue bolt kills net an excellent return. But having a great route does not guarantee a good run. You need to have skill and patience and play as well as you possibly can, but you also need the marauders to comply and have their best day, and then you have to pray that everything comes together in one run. I don't know how many attempts it took Horde Slayer to get this score, but I would estimate, based on my recent work on this challenge, that a 3 minute 30 60k run is only possible maybe 1 in 50 or perhaps 1 in 100 attempts. Let's have a look at the run itself. So the start of the run is the same as all runs you'll see on this challenge, going collecting these items. I would like to note just how quick and how smooth Horde Slayer's movement is, even through this early section here. To get round to this tree after whatever it is, 13 seconds, actually is harder than it looks. These 2 shots here are perfect. This one for the sniper is quite challenging. That hip shot there is good, and the reaction from the heavy is quite funny. Horde Slayer employs a rock there to take that marauder out of the way. So you can get round here to the next important marauder to catch, which is this chap here, who's armoured and has a pickaxe. And then we're over to our favourite guy, the yellow and black marauder. Catch him in the leg. And then moving back round here, this is quite a challenge with that shotgun marauder just still there, so he has to wait for him to move before he can go and get those items. Again, nice and smooth there. That's one of the very few little bashes into things you'll see on this run because Horde Slayer's movement is so good. This presents a bit of a challenge, so it's going around what's kind of the long way. You can get away with a lot once the battles begin, and this is one of the other kind of codes that Horde Slayer has cracked, that unless you're literally in the eye line of a marauder, if they're in the midst of a battle, they're not going to see you, they're just going to ignore you. I'm not going to say that AI is as problematic as it is in Survive, but some of these marauders are maybe not the brightest. This little throw to take out this marauder is perfect because also really needs to get to that hatch to put down this proximity mine, pretty much right now. And this little out and in is perfect because once you get down to, I think it's 8 marauders, 8 or 9 marauders, there'll be someone else who appears through this hatch who's another key part of this. There he is, and under the influence. So with 2 minutes 20 to go, 8 marauders still to kill. This is definitely a challenge, and you'll see that the way that Horde Slayer approaches this reflects this, because in an ideal world you want as many residue bolt kills as possible, but if you're going for a quick run, that's not always really the case. It's very difficult to do that. So right up against this guy, I love this roll here. Just completely ignore those two, even though they could easily get caught. Doesn't matter. Bravery is a big part of this run. And then with only 30 seconds left, he's just kind of got a hope that there are still a couple more residue bolt kills. The score here is in a very good place. Really want your score to be at or near 40k before you get the Camp Ghost bonus. Just about 10 seconds left. 2 left to kill. One of them's taken out with that Molotov. And then Horde Slayer got this guy playing a little bit of a cat and mouse game. Bosh. There you go. And 60k, which I don't think anybody had ever done before at that stage. Not legitimately. Been a couple of runs like that since, but that's for another video. And you can see here he's beaten BKazPab totally legitimately using a brilliant method. Well, there it is. Some of the most perfect 3 minutes and 24 seconds of Days Gone challenge mode play that you'll ever see. Thank you, Horde Slayer, for allowing me to use this footage and also for putting together this brilliant run. Your name is firmly etched permanently into challenge mode lore, my friend. Thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.